What's happening with you? This is the Roy C. Gilmore podcast, where real don't get no realer and it don't come with a filter. I am your host, Roy C. Gilmore. So this story begins with three friends, one named Justin, one named Kwan, and one female named Alexis. Now Alexis was Kwan's wife. Kwan was Justin's best friend. They had all known each other. They had all met at the same time and known each other for the exact same amount of time. Or so it seemed. Now, Kwan and Alexis had been trying to have a baby for quite some time, but for some odd reason, she couldn't get pregnant. Until one day, her period comes up late and she's pregnant. Now, Kwan was so excited, but Alexis wasn't as excited as Kwan was. And that's because deep down, she knew that that baby did not belong to Kwan. That child belonged to Justin. Kwan was under the impression that they all met at the same time, but truth be told, Alexis and Justin had been fucking for quite some time. They had known each other for years, and in every relationship that they got in, they was fucking each other. They weren't faithful in not one relationship they was in because they was always fucking each other. They always made plans to do the right thing and leave each other alone, but when it came down to it, they never let each other go. And her marriage was no exception. So to prevent the ending of her marriage, Alexis was going to go sneak and get an abortion without telling her husband, and she was going to make it seem like it was a miscarriage. And that is exactly what she did. Justin took her to the abortion clinic, and she did, in fact, get the abortion. And afterwards, she told her husband a few weeks later that she had had a miscarriage and she was scared to tell him because she didn't want to disappoint him. So her husband, sick with grief, decided he would take a week away to go to his family's house 2 hours away to grieve and heal. And he did just that. Now her husband and her had each other's location on their phone, so she saw where he was and he saw where she was. So she didn't leave the house. Her husband hadn't even been gone for 10 minutes before she texted Justin and told him to come over. And he did just that. He came over and they instantly began to have sex. Alexis and Justin had sex in the same bed that Alexis and her husband slept in. They fucked in the kitchen, they fucked on the floor, they fucked on the couch. She knew her husband's location, so whenever he was on the way back, she would simply tell Justin to leave. But what she did not know is that her husband was a very spiritual man, and he always listened to his ancestors. And his ancestors had informed him of everything that his wife had done and everything she was doing in the current moment. And because he loved her and he was tied to her, he was connected enough to her. Whenever her and Justin had sex, he felt it. He saw visions of them having sex in their bed. And he even saw visions of them before they met, of how many people's lives they had ruined, how many hearts they had broken, and how selfish, dishonest, and lustful they had been. Now, Kwan always listened to his ancestors, but not all of Kwan's ancestors were benevolent. Kwan had one ancestor that was specifically all about revenge. Now, he was always hesitant to listen to this ancestor, but it was his hesitance that allowed him to be ignorant for this long. But he was so angry and so hurt that this time he listened without hesitation. So Kwan finally made it to his family's house, and in his family's house was his grandmother. And Kwan's grandmother was a root worker. The moment she saw Kwan, she knew instantly what was on his heart and what was on his mind. And she instantly called him back to this room and she asked him, "Do you want to make them pay?" Kwan immediately said, "No, I still love her." But remember, every time her and Justin had sex, he could feel it. The moment he told his grandmother no, he felt them having sex again, and he began to wail in anguish. And his grandmother asked him again, "Do you want to make them pay?" Kwan, at his lowest, he got angry, and he said yes. And his grandmother told him the next time he enters her, he is not going to be able to leave. They will be stuck together as they have been for all of these years. Only this time, he won't be able to pry himself from her, not without dire consequence. And when he gets stuck, you go and visit him. You can consult with your ancestors what to do from that point, or you can act of your own accord. It is up to you. So Kwan is driving home, and as he's driving home, that one ancestor is just in his ear, spewing different ideas about how to make them pay. Meanwhile, Alexis and Justin are steady going at it, steady fucking, until Alexis gets a notification from her phone that her husband has departed from his family's location and is on the way back home. So she doesn't trip too hard because he has a 2-hour trip, so they continue to have sex. After about an hour and 30 minutes, they had about 30 minutes left before Kwan got home. Justin needed to go, but as Justin tried to pull his dick out of Alexis, he couldn't. The more he tried, the more pain it caused him. So time is dwindling down. What was 30 minutes is now 20 minutes. Now see, the thing about Alexis and Justin is they had never been caught, and they enjoyed the sneakiness, they enjoyed the adrenaline, they enjoyed the rush. So being caught was like their worst nightmare. So with 20 minutes left before Kwan got home, they began to freak out hysterically. Kwan is yanking and pulling, and Alexis is trying to get him off of her, but it only caused them more pain. After many unsuccessful attempts, time had passed, and now there was only 5 minutes left before Kwan got home. Desperate, Alexis told Justin, "I have an idea, quick. Let's go to the kitchen." Without thinking, Justin got up and they crawled to the kitchen, stuck to each other in the doggy-style position. Alexis is so scared that she's shaking, and Justin was so terrified that he accidentally vomited all over Alexis's back. So they finally make it to the kitchen. Alexis is disgusted, covered in vomit, and Justin was so distraught and terrified that he did not notice Alexis reaching into the kitchen drawer and grabbing a serrated kitchen knife. Alexis hears her husband's car pull into the driveway. The moment they heard that car pull in the driveway, Justin vomited again and he began to wail. Alexis immediately reached back with that kitchen knife and began to saw off Justin's dick. It did not take her long before she completely sawed through it. Alexis had managed to get free from Justin. There was blood everywhere. Alexis tried to get up quickly to go install her husband, but as she was getting up, she slipped on the blood and she hit her head and knocked herself unconscious. About 10 minutes later, Alexis had woken up. When she woke up, the blood was cleaned up. Justin was gone. She was on the couch and her husband was sitting across from her, just staring at her. Alexis, covered in vomit and blood, still had Justin's entire dick inside of her, because when she cut it off at the base, but the portion that was still inside of her remained. There was no lying her way out of this, but that did not stop her from trying. After a while of complete silence, the first thing that came out of her mouth was, "Justin tried to rape me. I tried to get to my phone to call you, but he overpowered me. But I managed to defend myself, and that was the reason for all the blood. I cut his dick off, but for some reason, I couldn't get it out of me. Can you please help me?" Kwan looked at Alexis, and he began to wail. And he looked off in the distance, and he said, "She is all yours. I give you permission to take her." Alexis, in confusion, said, "Who are you talking to, babe? And where's Justin?" And he said, "Had you told the truth, you would have been spared. But since you lied, I cannot save you. And as far as Justin, he was given the same opportunity as you just was. But since you are so concerned about his whereabouts, turn around." Alexis slowly turned around, and what she saw was Justin being consumed by this huge black serpent-like creature in the middle of their dining room. Majority of Justin's body had already been consumed, and this snake-like creature stared deeply into Alexis's eyes as it devoured Justin alive. All she could make out of Justin was his legs as he was still wiggling inside of the snake. As he was being slowly devoured, his screams were muffled as they were coming from the inside of the snake's gut, and his body was being crushed, and the sounds of his bones breaking echoed throughout the house. Alexis screamed to the top of her lungs like she had never screamed before. She screamed so loud that she burst blood vessels in her eyes, and her eyes were bloodshot red, and she began to take out running for the front door, where she was instantly knocked back by the tail of the serpent that was devouring Justin. Her body slammed against the wall, and her head bounced off the floor, and she was knocked unconscious. She was awakened about 10 minutes later from a warm kiss from her husband, Kwan. He looked her deeply in her eyes, and he said, "Baby, I love you, but you caused this on yourself." And then he stood up, and he stated to the serpent, "She is all yours. Start at her feet instead of her head, so she can watch as you devour her." Kwan then left the house immediately. Kwan did not want to, but remember, he always listened to his ancestors. The moment Kwan left that house, this serpent looked at her one last time with its deep, black, soulless eyes, and it struck her with its fangs. The snake's venom was so thick that it popped her blood vessels as it flowed through her veins. Her body began to go numb, but she was conscious of everything. The last thing Alexis saw was the inside of this snake's mouth spread wide as it slithered towards the bottom of her feet, like a wet pink pit of death, wrapping its mouth around her, swallowing her whole. She could not say a word, but if her soul could speak, it would speak the language of anguish, fear, and regret.